Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Rikudou, the One Above All by Novus Maximus. An extraordinary man dies, Naruto of course, in one world and awakes in another. A genius unrivaled in the use of his abilities that he once thought to be mere fiction. Witness the rise of the pillar of strength that shall hold the world up with the godly power that is within all. For he is the one avatar of the six paths reborn upon this world. He will be extremely overpowered and will have Renegan and Eames. I don't own anything, adios.
It felt weird in a way, to stand next to these impressionable children as they all gushed about what they thought they will be doing during their rescue training exercise. I remember the first time I went to the USJ quite well. It is an impressive structure and one that I dearly hope would survive the coming storm relatively intact. True, I had no proof that there might be a villain attack today, but it made an awful lot of sense when you think about it. The perpetrator used the gathered crowd of reporters as a smokescreen to enter UA. The most likely goal of this action was to gather intel on the schedule and the students that will be attending off-campus facilities. Say what you will about UA security, but attacking the main building was nothing short of suicide, even for someone of Endeavor's caliber. They were probably planning on ambushing a group of students at the USJ regardless of who those students were. Class 1A just so happened to be the first on the list. I looked around at the kids dressed up in their hero costumes. Honestly, they looked somewhat ridiculous in my eyes. They were so cheerful. It was almost heartbreaking to think that they were more than likely going to face villains by the end of the day. To the side, Aizawa was signaling me to come to him. I smiled and nodded, acting just like any other management department general course student, even if I was clad in high-grade armor underneath the henge I was using to appear as a generic 16-year-old student. Is everything set? I asked. Yes. All Might's not going to make it, though, said Aizawa. I cursed. My original plan was to help evacuate the students with 13 while All Might and Aizawa held the villains off. After that it was my turn to give the villains a good smack down. Unfortunately, it seems like All Might used all his time in his muscle form on petty thugs on the way to school. TCH, I should have expected it, I said in annoyance. Do we cancel the event? Asked Aizawa with a worried undertone in his voice. The truth of the matter was that facing down a well-organized group of villains would be problematic. If only I had more time to track down the perpetrators, this wouldn't have happened. I'll have to expect some kind of blowback from the media regardless of what will happen. I need to handle this with the utmost care. No, it's annoying, but I'll probably have to reveal my henge ability in the worst-case scenario. It can't be helped. The mission must continue, I said, annoyed. All right, problem child, this is your show, said Aizawa, leaving unsaid the "don't screw it up" at the end. I rejoined Class 1A as they got on the bus. This class was quite the lively bunch. So, Aikido-san, what do you think so far of the hero course? Said the red-haired kid on the bench opposite to mine. Kirishima, I think his name was. Oh, it's nice, I'm sure that you will all become great heroes, I said with a placating smile. I wasn't expecting my cover persona to be dragged into a discussion with the students of 1A, at least not one where said students weren't openly boasting about their powers. I suppose that Aizawa was right to keep this lot. Hey, thanks, though I have to ask, have you ever met Rikudou when you were at school last year? Asked Kirishima. I stiffened imperceptibly. With a quick glance around I could see that the rest of the students were also paying attention to the conversation, Izuku, Katsuki and Todoroki in particular. Why do you ask? I said, faking nervousness. What do you mean, why do we ask? That guy's a legend. He's the youngest pro hero ever and he's powerful enough to beat Endeavor and All Might, said a kid with blonde hair and a lightning bolt like black strands in it. Kaminari, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, yeah, I met him once during our first-year sports festival, I said, keeping up with the cover's known history. This drew the attention of the class even more so than our previous discussion. So how is he in person? Asked Kirishima with an excited smile on his face. I didn't meet him in person, per se, but I can tell you that I don't remember much after the horn sounded and announced the second round, I said. Some might feel bad for lying to these kids, but I have no such inhibitions. After all, I couldn't care less if this entire class would die so long as Izuku was safe. This being said, I believe that this mentality is more or less a result of my desire to not fall under the curse of hatred. To do that, the most effective way is to prevent the Mangekyo from activating and prevent any situation that would require and/or force its activation. TCH, of course you wouldn't, grumbled Katsuki. So, you can't tell us anything about Rikudou? Asked Todoroki. Well, I could tell you his name, I said, time to test out a little theory of mine. This drew the curious eyes of the crowd. From the corner of my eye I saw the panicked look on Izuku's face. I could also see Aizawa giving me a "really" look, so much so that I struggled to not grin back. So, say it, said Kaminari. I could tell that everyone on the bus was thinking the same thing, minus, of course, those already in the know. I paused dramatically, His name is Madara Midoriya, I said. There was silence in the bus as almost every pair of eyes turned to look at Izuku. I could tell that Izuku was panicking on the inside. Well, panicking more than what was showing on the outside. Okay, that's enough of that. We're here, said Aizawa. That man, ruining my fun like this, and by the look on his face he knew exactly what he was doing. I moved away from the main body of the class and pretended to go to the observation room to the side of the USJ. From there it would be a simple matter to monitor the events in the dome. Class 1A moved inside the large domed structure that was the USJ. Even so, they were only half paying attention to what 13 was telling them. The other half of their mind was occupied with the revelation that one of their classmates was the brother of the most powerful hero student ever. There was not a single person in the country that didn't know about the famed Rikudou. The kid who entered UA at 14 and graduated at 15, all the while taking a place at All Might's side as his heir presumptive. After the regular spiel from 13 about the dangers of their powers, they were led inside. Aizawa was standing next to one of the pillars near the entrance on guard for any suspicious activity. He knew that Madara was doing the same from the observation room, but it never hurt to have more eyes on the job. Just then the lights flickered and the fountain began to misfire. Aizawa was instantly on high alert. A pool of darkness seemingly appeared in front of the fountain and expanded. People began to exit the darkness. Everyone back. Those are villains, said Aizawa as he prepared himself for battle. The students seemed frightened by his statement. How were they able to get here? Asked Kirishima somewhat rhetorically. Sensei, what about the trespassing sensors? Why aren't they activating? Asked Yaoyorozu. They must have some kind of quirk that's blocking them from activating, said 13. Or they have a skilled hacker on their side, commented Izuku. The other students turned to look at him in surprise and Izuku blushed at the attention. Kaminari, see if you can reach anyone outside, ordered Aizawa. No sensei, I can't reach anyone, said Kaminari. That settles it. This is the work of a quirk. 13 Take the students away and keep them safe, ordered Aizawa as he prepared himself for battle. Wait, sensei, you can't seriously think that you can win against all of them. You'll die of exhaustion, said Izuku. Aizawa didn't refute that. Izuku Midoriya knew his fighting style and his body's limitation, and he was correct. In a straight fight against that many opponents, he would lose by exhausting himself against the villains. Don't worry Midoriya, this is just a delaying action. The main event is yet to come, said Aizawa. As if in response to his words, a devastating boom was heard from the outside and the ground shook. Is that All Might? Asked Kirishima. Most student their classmate's semi-rhetorical question, but a few knew better. Another boom and the doors were blasted inwards by the body of a monstrous villain with pitch black skin and a bird-like grinning face. The villain flipped and landed on his feet at the base of the stairs. As soon as he came to a stop, a blue streak shot forth from the dust that appeared in the wake of the villain's encounter with the doors and rewarded said villain with a sword through his mouth and head. So great was the force the sword was thrown with that the villain found himself nailed to the ground with the sword sticking upwards from his mouth like some sort of perverted mockery of Excalibur's legend. What manner of mongrel dares attack this school? Came a voice from the now settling dust. The students turned their eyes to look at the new arrival, and what they saw rooted them to the ground. Coming out of the smoke, dressed in pristine black and red armor, was by all intents and purposes an Izuku Midoriya look-alike. However, in their hearts the students knew that was false. This was not their shy green-haired classmate. If you ignored the superficial, the differences were clear. Shorter hair and narrowed glowing green eyes that were looking at the villains before them with contempt. The figure before them was an impressive sight to behold as he walked forward, weathered in blue lightning and outputting enough pressure to be felt across the entirety of the USJ. Rikudou had arrived. I had barely arrived in the control room when the monitors flickered off and the power cut out to the cameras inside the USJ. I had hoped to see at least a bit of the students' capabilities, and in all honesty the villains should have done the same. This means that the leader of the villains was impatient or a risk-taker. Which one it was is still to be determined. I dropped the henge and flooded my body with lightning-natured chakra. I did not activate my now completed lightning style. Lightning chakra armor because like it or not it's a power hog, and I most often than not have other means of dealing with my enemies. This being said, it's not like my base speed is anything to be ashamed of, it's just not at the ludicrous level of the speed I have when using the lighting chakra armor. I ran to the entrance, and just as I reached it, my instincts screamed at me to dodge. I dodged, barely, and the punch that was meant to take me out buried itself into the ground with a resounding boom. I backflipped away from the being who attacked me. I see, so the villains designed to send someone to guard the entrance while the main group takes care of the students. A pity that I was the one sent to reinforce them. I ducked under another punch and kicked out at the villain's midsection. The kick was too fast for the villain to react, and the power behind it was enough to send it crashing through the doors of USJ and into the large square in the middle of the structure. Strange, the kick had enough power behind it to turn All Might's insides to mush, and yet the villain appeared to be able to recover. I drew my sword, charged it with lightning-natured chakra and flung it at the enemy. It became a streak of blue light as it raced to its target and ended up embedding itself into the villain's skull through his mouth, nailing the villain to the floor behind him. I surveyed the area as I exited the dust cloud. What manner of mongrel dares attack this school? I came to a stop at the tip of the stairs and crossed my arms as I looked at the impudent rabble below. One of the villains with whitish blue hair and hands stuck on his body began to scratch his neck intensely. "Nomu," he said. My advanced hearing could make out what he was saying despite the distance. As soon as he said that, the villain that I had just killed brought his hand up and grasped the handle of the sword I had thrown into his mouth and pulled it out. I couldn't help but be slightly repulsed by the sight. What manner of creature was that? No human could have survived having their brainstem destroyed. The creature returned to its master's side and stood alongside another creature, presumably of the same origin as itself. This being said, I couldn't help but feel that this other creature is much more powerful than its sibling creation. It is clear, this is no mere attack but the opening shot of a much greater war. "Villains, identify yourself and your intentions, and I may yet consider your pleas for mercy," I declared loudly. The villains looked up at me startled, and I flashed my Sharingan on. At the sight of these eyes, most of the villains began to take a step back and avert their eyes, having heard of my hypnotic powers. Suddenly before me a black abyss appeared in the shape of a drain, and out of this abyss two glowing yellow eyes appeared. "We are the League of Villains. Our mission here is to ensure that this location is All Might's grave." I have to say, I didn't think that the famed Rikudou himself would come to the children's rescue. "It seems that All Might has failed in his task as the symbol of peace," said the owner of the eyes in the darkness. I raised an eyebrow. Is this it? No idealistic speech about what's wrong with society and other such acts of theater? Well then, this is interesting. Interesting, you group is clearly a new one, or I would have heard of a quirk like yours being used for villainous acts. The question remains, will you come quietly, or must I use force to make you? I said. The eyes narrowed, and as he began to speak again I made my move. In an instant I was in front of him and my Sharingan bore into his yellow eyes. "I am possible. Sharingan. Genjutsu, Kurogiri," yelled the hands guy. His body instantly formed and I grabbed the villain by his now exposed metallic collar. "How?" he asked as he tried futilely to rid himself of the bonds of the genjutsu I had him placed under. "Wouldn't you like to know? Now I'll be taking all the info that's in that little head of yours. Try not to resist, it would make this whole ordeal go quicker," I said as my Sharingan glowed brightly and the tomo began to spin. I felt its mind resisting my intrusion, but it was futile. I broke through its meager defenses and began extracting its memories. I doubt that I could have used this method on anyone capable of wielding chakra even at a most basic level. "Nomu, kill him!" screamed the hands guy. Even though I was looking into the eyes of my target as I was rummaging through its surprisingly empty mind, my Sharingan could detect the beam of energy that was hurtling towards me, having been fired by the other creature. Breaking my mental connection with the one now identified as Kurogiri, I threw my captive into the nearby lake. This would more than likely lead to his escape, and if not, then he will drown. I can't be too careless with the lives of villains, especially not when there are impressionable children behind me. If I did, then the media and the Hero Commission would raise a fuss and give me more headaches than a teleporting villain, and yes, pun intended. Reaching into my pouch, I withdrew 7 pre-prepared Fuinjutsu talismans and threw them between myself and the beam. Now, I wouldn't normally use an untested technique like this, but I can't dodge the beam or else it would hit the group of students behind me that were busy evacuating. "Fuinjutsu barrier style, Roias," I said as I thrust my hand forward. I maneuvered the talismans in place with chakra strains and activated the seal. From each talisman a blue sealing circle spun into existence, and from each circle a single line was sent to the origin, in this case my palm, where another bigger circle spun into existence. Just as the beam reached me, 7 concave golden layers of chakra appeared before me, each bearing the Fuinjutsu of the sealed tag that spawned it. The beam stuck the next moment, and its force was so great that it sent me skidding back towards the group of frightened students. I reinforced my feet with chakra and used chakra's suction properties to stick to the ground, but even so the pressure was so immense that I'd need my feet. The first layer failed the very next moment, sending a shockwave through the air behind me. I could hear the screams of the students as the harsh winds buffed against them, forcing them to take cover behind the cupola provided by my shield. The second layer broke and the beam showed no signs of stopping. If nothing else, it seemingly increased in power. The power burst was enough to shatter the third barrier. I clenched my fist as I focused more chakra into the barrier, doing my best to keep the beam at bay. I had more than half of the original barrier's total layers, so I wasn't too worried. The fourth barrier broke just as the beam shut down. I kept the shield up for a few moments as I surveyed the enemy. They seemed shocked at my survival. "Ni-san," yelled Izuku as he tried to get to me. "I'm okay, Izuku. Roias has proven effective, I said as I allowed the remaining 3 layers to dispel and the remaining 3 tags that didn't shatter burned up as the fuinjutsu that was maintaining them was dispelled. You cheater, yelled the hands guy. He seemed to be scratching his neck furiously, and I'm sure that his eyes were gleaming with madness behind that severed hand that covered his face. Now that I'm thinking about it, disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Tamura Shigaraki, calm yourself, said Kurogiri that seemed to snap the now-named Shigaraki out of his scratching frenzy. If you weren't out Warp Gate, I would have turned you to dust. Kurogiri. That man, he lied to me. That energy beam the Nomu fired should have destroyed All Might in one shot, yelled Shigaraki. The students heard this and looked at me in shock. A most accurate assessment. If it was able to hit All Might it would have indeed been enough to kill him, I said in a low tone. I was heard by the class behind me. I think that some are crying. Ni-san, I heard behind me. I turned just enough to get a look at the kids with the corner of my eyes. Their faces told me all that was needed to. Don't worry, everything will be alright. Why? Their eyes widened and I swear that Izuku was crying. Because I am here, I roared. My chakras surged, cracking the ground even more than it already was, as the familiar feel of lighting covered me in a storm of blue arcs signaling the activation of the famed lightning-styled chakra armor. I didn't need to look back to know that every single student gave off a relieved breath of relief at my words. For the villains, this was probably their worst nightmare as they all were preparing to flee and even Shigaraki took a step back in fright. I withdrew 4 kunai from my pouch that had special sealing tags attached to the end. With a flick of my wrist they were embedded into the 4 corners of the plateau we were standing in. Izuku, do you have the distributor seal on you? I asked. Huh? That why yes, I have it, said Izuku as he took out a small piece of paper with the seal. Good, I need you to protect your classmates with this barrier, I said motioning at the 4 kunai with tags at the end. All the color drained from Izuku's face. Ni-san. I can't, began Izuku but I cut him off. I'll erect the barrier, however I need you to maintain it, I said. I didn't have much time for talk. I needed to go in now. Rikudou, we can't keep them here, said Aizawa looking worried. Here is the safest place for them. The barrier will hold against anything other than that warp guy or the 2 creatures. If I was ambushed outside, what's to say that there won't be other traps? I cut him off. The man gave me a reluctant nod. I began my hand seals. Fuinjutsu barrier style, heavenly 4-wind rotation. Behind me Izuku was awkwardly folding his hand into seals as he slapped his hand on the small seal on the ground. From each of the sealing tags on the kunai a blue Fuinjutsu circle once again spun into existence. From their lines were drawn between them and the small green circle that spun into existence from Izuku's seal. Once connected a greater circle spun into existence and the barrier sprung into existence as a thin but deadly layer of wind blades circling it close to Mach 10. Once that was done I sprang into action, the ground cracking even more as I shot forward and down the stairs, appearing to be a blue blur to all who saw me. Run! Yelled the villains, but they were too slow. On the way down I retrieved my once discarded sword. I slowed down just enough to once again be visible and not kill anyone with my punches. This being said, while I might have lost the blue streak, my chakra-saturated sword did not. As I swung it a blue hue was constantly emitted, making my swordsmanship something to behold as my lighting-coated saber sliced through various appendages of the villains. Nothing truly crippling, they might not be able to use their quirk after this, but then again they wouldn't have been allowed to regardless. After I was done incapacitating their quirks, I used the lightning that my armor gave them as a short-range stunner. That way I didn't need to get close to them and try to punch them. Nomu! Yelled Shigaraki looking at him. I saw that the first creature was nowhere to be seen. My instinct screamed at me, but in the position I was in couldn't dodge and thusly I could only block. I put my faith in my technique and took the blow from the Nomu head on. Because I was off balance I was thrown back and ended up skidding across the lake. Suckers, I can walk on water. Water style. Water dragon bullet. As soon as I finished the hand seals, 3 great water dragons shot up from the lake and let loose a most terrible roar. I rode on the head of the 3rd dragon and finishing another set of hand seals the water sparked as lighting-natured chakra coursed through it. Lightning style. Spider web. The villains that were hiding in the water were knocked unconscious and some might have drowned. Let's not dwell on that. The 2 dragons in front crashed into the central plaza and managed to wipe off most of the villains and the muscled Nomu. Shigaraki and Kurogiri were saved by a shield erected by the apparently catatonic Nomu that fired that beam at me at the beginning of our fight. Fire style. Great fireball. I jumped off the dragon as I took a deep breath and spat out a fireball the size of a small house at the shield. My remaining water dragon was headed to another open zone to stun the villains there and prevent their escape. Meanwhile I had to deal with the Nomu. As I was falling I put my hand up and used one of the most iconic techniques in my arsenal. Rasengan. I roared as a giant spinning ball of blue chakra roared into existence in my palm. The Rasengan was easily bigger than me, but I did not care as I brought it down on the head of the poor Nomu. Burst. I roared. The ball ballooned and shot out of my hand with tremendous force, carving a trench through the ground of the USJ and then carving in half the fake mountain of the mudslide zone before finally punching through the dome of the USJ and turning upwards, leaving two trails of blue light swirling together in a helix before finally detonating high in the sky with a spectacular explosion. I landed near the base of the stairs and turned to face the remaining enemies. They weren't looking good. Shigaraki was severely burnt and Kurogiri appeared to have lost quite a bit of his mist. The Nomu on the other hand was still alive and kicking and apparently healing. Good thing that I took out the other one with that much overkill. After all, it's impossible to heal from being atomized. No, 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 IREFUZE to ACCEP, game over. You cheater. The final boss was supposed to appear at the end, not at the beginning, yelled Shigaraki. We must withdraw Shigaraki Tamura. We cannot defeat him and the Nomu can't even match him. We have lost, said Kurogiri. Perhaps, but we can make sure that he doesn't win, said Shigaraki, now unexpectedly calm. I could see a maniacal grin forming behind his face hand that put me instantly on guard. You aren't doing any of that, came Aizawa's voice. His capture weapon warped two of them and his quirk was active. That meant no warping for Kurogiri, and if what I learned from him is correct, then no decay for Shigaraki. Still, Shigaraki's grin didn't abate. Eraser, cover their mouths, I yelled. Nomu, kill everyone, ordered Shigaraki. The creature screeched and let loose a burst of power that knocked Aizawa back, forcing him to blink. That fraction of a second was all it took and Kurogiri and Shigaraki warped away. Eraser, I roared again. It's not working, Aizawa yelled back. The barrier against the creature was apparently capable of mitigating Aizawa's quirk then. Intriguing. I looked at the screeching creature and my Sharingan detected what could only be described as an immense power accumulating where its heart should be. My eyes widened in understanding as the creature let loose a shockwave-like barrier. I dashed to Aizawa and used my body to shield him, allowing my lightning chakra armor and actual armor take the blow. Still, it was powerful enough to disrupt my armor circuits and shut down my shield. Looking back, I saw it priming what could only be described as some sort of energy breath, most likely the same attack I blocked earlier. As it did so, the curious-looking cylindrical things lining its back and hands depressed into its flesh, making the creature's muscles balloon up. With my Sharingan, I could see the power coursing through its veins suddenly increase tenfold and become something extremely unstable. It wouldn't be wrong for me to say that the creature had somehow tapped into the hidden power of the 8 gates, and this is some sort of artificial method of extracting said power, though at a terrible cost. Eraser, that thing's going kamikaze and plans to take us out with it. Retreat to the shield dome if it's still up, if not take the kids and go as far as you can, I said. What about you, Rikudou? He asked a stupid, pointless question, Aizawa. Don't you know that already? I'm here, after all, I said back with a grin. Aizawa held my Sharingan gaze for a moment before breaking out in a sprint up the stairs. I turned my eyes back on the monster in front of me. Fuck it, I won't let some third-rate science experiment kill me. Lightning swirled around my arm as I drew it back and consolidated in my hand as a spear. Lightning style. Lightning spear. I threw the spear at the Nomu, though this only seemed to enrage it as it engaged once again its barrier. The lightning spear crashed against the barrier and for a moment it seemed to work. But suddenly the barrier began spinning and the spear skipped on the now uneven surface and landed in the fire zone, making a giant hole in the dome cover, allowing villains and fire to escape. Fuck this, Earth style. Cataclysmic quake, I roared. I slapped my hands on the ground as I finished my hand seals and flared my chakra. The ground trembled as it cracked under the immense forces I was putting upon it. The grounds of the USJ ruptured as if they were great tectonic plates. The fissures didn't only remain on the ground. The massive dome that covered the arena split and tore asunder with massive chunks of concrete and metal falling from the sky. The small-time villains that were still conscious and alive on the ground below huddled together in fear of the might before them. The lake of the shipwreck zone cracked and spilled its water and the resulting flood engulfed the storm dome, knocking down buildings and crushing villains in the debris. I stopped the jutsu and stood back up. I calmed and centered myself. This fight has already exhausted almost a quarter of my chakra. Hey, I'm a monster. I couldn't stop myself from grinning. Never before had I had such a satisfying fight. It's almost a shame it has to end. Earth style. Great bedrock shut. I roared. Chakra flared as I held my hands clasped together in the snake seal. The ground trembled once again and moved. In a seemingly impossible feat, the 7 shards of the USJ moved away from one another, crushing all in their path. The news helicopters above me captured this sight, as I would later learn. I took a deep breath as I ended the technique. Only a few more to go. By the amount of power the creature is building, it's clear that it draws its power from nature energy as well as its own strength. But even a potent source of power like nature energy is not as plentiful as you may like to believe. Besides, it's difficult to control, and that's the opposite of what that creature is doing. By the looks of things, the blast would be quite massive. I formed the cross seal and 6 shadow clones appeared. They each flickered to one of the remaining 6 shards of what was once the USJ. I can't let these villains die like this, even if it would be infinitely easier to protect just this one shard. I formed another set of seals along with my clones. Earth style. Earth barrier, we called out at once. Alongside the rim of each of our shards, great walls of stone rose from the ground to stand against whatever force their maker intended, but I knew this would not be enough to weather this storm. That was why my clones and I stood outside the walls. Each of us withdrew 7 sealing talismans from our pouches. As the creature reached its critical point, we threw the seals in the air and focused our chakra. Ro-aias. We roared as one shimmering blue fuinjutsu circle spun to life around the talismans, connecting the 7 to the one in the middle. Once again the 7-layered golden barrier sprung to life as the creature detonated. The shockwave was enough to shatter the glass of the main building at UA and do the same for a good number of buildings in the adjacent town. After that came the omnidirectional energy burst that crashed against the 7 shields with 7 layers. A portion of that energy shot into the sky as some sort of twisted beacon to all to bear witness, a twisted monument to this battle. I could feel my reserves drain as I struggled to maintain all 7 shields by myself by means of the chakra transferal between myself and my shadow clones. The first layer broke and I lost concentration for a bit, skidding back until my back was firmly pressed against the wall. Soon after the second layer broke, and with it went the wall my back was pressed against. As I did the first time, I reinforced my feet and stuck myself to the ground with chakra. As soon as I did that, the third layer broke. Whatever that thing did to itself to get this much power was clearly a one-trick pony, and it wouldn't have been that bad if it wasn't a constant stream of energy that was bombarding my shields. It takes a lot more chakra to constantly reinforce the whole area of the shield as opposed to a single spot of less surface. This was barely going on for 30 seconds and I already burned through half of my remaining chakra. The fourth layer broke and then the pulse happened, shattering the ground I stood upon by the force it exerted on myself. This in the process broke the 5th layer, and with my chakra reserves dwindling I couldn't reinforce the 6th quite enough, and it broke as well. I was left with a single barrier between myself, the kids, the other villains, and the self-destructing creature. Just as cracks were beginning to form on the 7th and final layer, the energy stopped. I looked up and saw a charred corpse standing on a solitary pillar of earth a good 50 meters in front of me. Almost as soon as I saw it, it crumbled like dust along with the pillar it was standing on. I dispelled the barrier and my clones and staggered backwards from the feedback I received. I remained standing. Even if I have barely a tenth of my original reserve, I cannot allow myself to show any kind of weakness. I looked me at the crater where the central fountain of USJ used to be. The war has just begun, all for one, and I don't intend to lose. Fuinjutsu barrier style. Roi is the golden shield with 7 layers said to have an equal defensive power to that of the triple Rashomon. In a dark room of an unnamed tower somewhere in Japan stood a man without equal among his peers. He was all for one, arguably the greatest quirk user of all time due to his quirk of the same name that allowed him to take and give quirks at will. Suddenly the building rumbled and the door to the room he was in was blasted open. From the doorway, in all his glory, came forth Rikudou. I had to say, I wasn't expecting you so soon. Tamura has barely begun healing, said All for One. Rikudou's glowing red eyes narrowed. We both know that you're a fake, so I had to ask why the charade. You can see through this projection? Exquisite, simply exquisite. I can't wait to take your quirk away from you, though by the measure of your power that would prove quite difficult in my current state, said All for One with a smile behind his mask. Rikudou did not relent his glare. And what makes you so certain that you will even be able to take it? At this the villain laughed. It seems that my mouth has spoken without my will. I apologize for this bad habit of mine, but when I see a powerful quirk I just can't help but take it. Rikudou remained silent. Have I offended you in some way? Asked All for One curiously. Not at all, I'm just struggling to see how a man in a state such as yours can do anything besides being a vegetable on some hospital bed. Forgive me if I don't take your supposed threat seriously, said Rikudou. You have quite a mouth on you, boy, said All for One in reply, his previous jovial mood vanishing suddenly. So, do you, but at least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. You're a nihilistic sociopath, All for One. Consider this my declaration of war. In a flash of blue, a sword was embedded through the projection's chest and into the monitor behind it, destroying it. So be it, said All for One and vanished. Did you get all that? Asked Rikudou. Yeah, that was definitely him. I still can't believe he survived our fight all those years ago, said All Might as he came through the door looking at the chair where his nemesis's projection once stood. We have the proof we need. We can prepare, said Rikudou as he retrieved his word. Indeed, but still, can't we let them be children still? Even if for a little while longer? Asked All Might pleadingly. Madara looked at him. You know as well as I do that the sports festival is a double-edged sword, and with him on the loose the secret of just who his one-for-all successor would be solved. All for One has enough to worry about with just me and play. Adding on to that the 9th user of One for All would be too much. Whatever long-term experiment he's planning that involves One for All would be instantly scrapped and Izuku killed, said Madara darkly. You're still going on about that theory of yours? Asked All Might. Something's afoot here, All Might. Why else would All for One even allow an existence that could threaten his own, if it does not involve a long-term goal? It may just be that each and every user of One for All was lucky, but I'd like to err on the side of caution, said Madara. All Might had no reply to that and just chose to accept it. Madara may be paranoid, but when dealing with the likes of All for One, that paranoia is well deserved. Meanwhile, deep underneath the mountain stood the real All for One and the doctor before 2 pods. The pods contained the healing forms of Shigaraki Tamura and Kurogiri. How are they? Asked All for One. Healthy, except for the burns of course. Still it's fortunate that you decided to send the second weapon along. I shudder to think what would have happened had Rikudou managed to retrieve all the knowledge in Kurogiri's mind, said the doctor. That creature was a failure. Its power level could not reach what I desired, but it was useful as a one-shot type of weapon. I worry, though. Never before have I encountered one such as the one called Rikudou. If I didn't know better I'd say that he's the second coming of myself, said All for One. So, he doesn't have your brother's quirk? Asked the doctor. No, that much I could confirm, said All for One resolutely. Energy manipulation, elemental manipulation, physical enhancements and hypnotic powers of such potency that he was able to wrench information from Kurogiri mind. What's more, his family history shows no sign that such a powerful quirk could be spawned from them, though there is one interesting thing to note, said the doctor as he rummaged through his files. His little brother, Izuku Midoriya, is quirkless? Are you certain? Asked All for One. Oh, yes, very. I examined the boy myself, though from recent reports it seems that he has entered the UA school's hero course and Kurogiri has seen him among the crows of students, said the doctor. All for One leaned back and grinned. I see, so he's the one. No matter, we'll see the measure of his power on the sports festival in a few weeks. Until then, I'll have my agents intensify the search for the one known as Overhaul. The day after the USJ attack was a clusterfuck of epic proportions. I should have expected it, really, but the fact of the matter is that the difference in power between myself and the rest of the world is too vast to be overcome with mere imagination. My ability to tear apart the USJ and to produce a defense against such powerful attacks is far beyond anyone in this world. Of course, the media descended upon the site of the battle as soon as it had ended, and how could they not? It's not like I was subtle by any definition of the word. It didn't help that Nezu decided to leak the footage of my encounter with the League of Villains to the public. I admit that I was impressive in my acts during the battle, but I would have liked to have at least some of my techniques unknown. Though, that's not strictly true, they still don't know anything about plasma release and wood release. I had to give a speech on the villain attack, or so the Might Tower Public Relations Department manager told me. In these past few months that place has become like my very own agency. It helped that over the last 6 years all Might has done there was to do the essential paperwork. After all, it's not like the employees there know that their boss has one foot in the grave already. Still, there is much to consider. My little chat with All for One is one of them. Why that man allowed himself to be discovered is a mystery, and it wasn't like we had hard evidence of his involvement in the USJ attack. The Nomu were both utterly annihilated, one admittedly by its own doing, and the knowledge I pulled from Kurogiri's mind is far from complete. All I could extract, besides some basic information about himself and Shigaraki, were some coordinates which have thus far proven to be dead ends, except one that is. It was a curious-looking bar that seemed to have functioned as a sort of main base for the villains. It had obviously been abandoned, but that didn't really matter. It takes time to establish a hideout, time that might be better used elsewhere doing other things. If nothing else, then my actions have served to delay the enemy. It's barely been a day and I'm already exhausted. This shadow war is not an easy one to wage, especially since I'm up against the Emperor of Shadows. I need to get on his tail and quickly, but first, a little chat with my winged friend. Hawks, your help is needed, Shota Aizawa sighed deeply as he entered his class, 2 days after the USJ attack. As soon as he entered, the class said their usual greetings, but even a blind man could see the anxiety and uncertainty in them, and most especially their somewhat frayed relationship with Izuku Midoriya. First things first, I think it's time we talk about what happened at the USJ, said Aizawa. None spoke a word, but there were clearly some looks shared between his students. Ask any question you like, and I'll answer it to the best of my abilities. Sensei, just who was that guy at the USJ? I mean, I know he's Midoriya's brother and All Might's heir, but there's nothing else about him, asked Shiro. That's a good question, and one more than me, said Aizawa. We asked, but he won't tell us, said Kaminari. Aizawa looked at Izuku, who was doing his best to become as small as possible. Aizawa sighed. Well, I can't blame him for that. said Aizawa, that had the whole class's attention back on him. Madara Midoriya is a difficult person to understand. I doubt anyone truly does, and few are even close enough to gaining a complete picture on that man. He is many things: a scientist, a doctor, an engineer and a warrior without peer, but I would hesitate to call him a hero, said Aizawa. This brought about a look of shock to the faces of the students. They couldn't understand, couldn't equate the feelings they held when they saw Rikudou stand in their defense with someone who their teacher would hesitate to call a hero. But sensei, he protected us, he began Kirishima, but he was cut off by Aizawa. He did those things out of duty, not out of desire to save people. The only one I've seen him care for is his brother, and to a lesser extent All Might. This cut short any replies from the class. Then why did he become a pro-hero? Asked Todoroki neutrally. To use his power freely, said Izuku. All eyes fell on him, even Aizawa's. Izuku looked up and met his teacher's gaze. Are we really telling them that? Asked Izuku. Aizawa knew what he was referring to. An altered cover story that Madara came up with in order to explain All Might's ever-decreasing presence on the world stage and induce a state of fear into whomever hears it. Fear that was supposed to either motivate or eliminate those who were useless from the battlefield, thus increasing the number of competent and mentally prepared future heroes. Tell us what are you bastards hiding? Asked Katsuki angrily. All Might's retiring, was Aizawa's short reply. Whatever response Katsuki was preparing was instantly dismissed as he sat back down in his chair, eyes wide with disbelief. Not that he was alone. What? Asked Kirishima softly, looking at Izuku. Izuku nodded grimly. It's true. All Might's been slowly losing his quirk due to an injury he sustained against a villain 6 years ago. Since then his time doing hero work is limited, and recently it has declined sharply. This was the reason All Might wasn't there at the USJ, and the reason why he decided to teach at UA. His time as the #1 hero is almost over, and he hopes to find and train the next symbol from this generation, said Aizawa. But he has Rikudou, right? Why does he need us? Asked Kirishima, shocked at what he heard. Ni-san isn't a symbol. At best he's a pillar, a light to guide society through turmoil. But he can't do what All Might did. He just can't, said Izuku. The board might not like me to tell you this, but you need to know, began Aizawa. As of 2 days ago we are at war with a terrifying enemy. One that could shatter the very foundations of our society. Their attack at the USJ was meant to remove All Might in order to isolate Rikudou and use his failings as a symbol and as the eventual #1 hero as the catalyst that leads to the downfall of the hero system. Now that their original plan is foiled, we don't know how they will react. Oh man, what are we to do? We're not even a week into the school year and we're sent out to fight a war. I haven't even touched a boob, screamed Mineta, only to be slapped by Suyu's tongue. Nobody is making you fight in a war, you're just students after all. But you need to know these things. The sports festival is coming up in a couple of weeks, and it will be watched by all, heroes, civilians and villains. What you will show there will be known by all, removing the advantage of anonymity, but it will also open the doors for new opportunities to learn and grow. What path you take is up to you, but be warned, you may have encountered villains and know the cold truth of our society, but the other students do not. I would like to keep it that way. In many ways they will be your biggest obstacles, as they will treat this sports festival like a game. Class 1A is in the spotlight of the world. Will you rise to the occasion? Said Aizawa. Heck yay, was the overwhelming reply. Aizawa smiled under his scarf. He got the kids all hyped up, the rest was up to them. I was back at UA 2 days after the attack at the USJ. The reason for this was simple. Nezu decided to hold a meeting in order to compile all of our findings on this so-called League of Villains and to brief his own staff on the dangers we face. Nezu, All Might, Aizawa, Vlad, Midnight and I were sitting at a table in one of UA's conference rooms listening to Tsukauchi giving the rundown of the investigation so far. In the aftermath of the USJ attack we have captured 57 villains as a result of Rikudou's actions and retrieved another 15 bodies belonging to villains. However, we can't seem to find anything on either Shigaraki or Kurogiri in our database. It's possible that they were using fake names, or they weren't registered as citizens, said Tsukauchi. As expected, considering the numerous parties at play here, I said. Indeed, All Might, can you identify who is Shigaraki's benefactor? Asked Nezu. All Might frowned. Earlier today, Rikudou and I were investigating one of the locations that Rikudou retrieved from Kurogiri's mind. There he found someone waiting for us. All for one, I cut in, stopping All Might's monologue. The atmosphere in the room was heavy. Yes, we discovered All for one, or rather his projection. The reason why he decided to support this man-child that is Shigaraki is still unknown to us, said All Might. I hummed, unknown, yes, but not undiscoverable. I believe that All for one may be training Shigaraki to eventually replace him, I said. There was shock through the room. Young Madara, you can't possibly believe that, said All Might, scandalized. It's not a matter of belief, All Might, but rather one of logical deduction. It is clear that Shigaraki does not have the resources or the capabilities to organize such an assault without outside help. Furthermore, the creation of a creature like the Nomu I battled requires an in-depth understanding of quirks and their interactions with the body, and particularly the link between the quirk factor and chakra, I said coldly. The other teachers felt dread. So, what you're saying is that someone else discovered how to use chakra? Asked Vlad. No, nothing as such. However, the power the second creature displayed to be able to almost completely destroy Roias is something special. What I sensed from it was similar to what I feel when I use my gates, though this being said, whatever device or quirk was used to access that power is obviously imperfect and dangerous, I said. That is worrying. To be able to boost one's quirk that much is something that cannot be allowed to exist in the hands of villains, said Nezu. Indeed, but I do not believe that it is complete or safe to use for that matter. It required outside stabilization, and even then the power it outputted is far below what I can attain if I open a mere 4 gates. Whomever is behind this and working in collusion with All for One to create these creatures is clearly fixated on quirks and quirks alone. That kind of mentality serves as well, since it will make them overlook the possibility that chakra can be used by itself and not in a quirk, I said. You might be right about that, but we only have you and your brother as chakra users while the enemy is capable of creating entire armies of these creatures, said Vlad. I doubt it. This was a test, a prototype. All for One is arrogant enough to think that using such destructive methods to boost a Nomu's power is beneath him. That man would not want to waste any of his precious quirks, said All Might. That may be true, but we are entering the realm of wild speculation here. It may put us off balance if we continue this train of thought, something that may play directly into All for One's hand. We should focus on more pressing matters such as the upcoming sports festival, I said. My kids are ready, but I had to use one of your contingencies on them, Madara, D and eyebrow, and he continued. I told the kids that All Might's retiring. What, are you out of your mind, Aizawa? Yelled Vlad. If you want to coddle them, do it with your own class. My kids already know what the real world means, and if All for One is truly back in action, we can't let them go out unprepared. The sports festival was always a weak point in our students' future and one they must learn to overcome, said Aizawa. I see. Well then I believe we are done here, I said standing up. Call me if you need anything. Can we count on you for the festival? Asked Nezu. Of course, I replied. I exited the room with Tsukauchi following me. I had 2 weeks before the trail runs cold and the sports festival begins. There was smoke in the room as 2 people dragged another inside and shut the door, barricading it from the inside. Shit, what do we do, man? Our quirks are useless against that guy. Not even the boss was able to take him down. Well, I guess that it's true what they said about him, said the second man. Huh? Asked the first. I remember the boss saying that even the big wigs in the government are bowing to him, and boss was willing to cut a deal. And betray him? Is he crazy? Asked the first one, scandalized. This earned him a smack over the head. Look around, you idiot. This isn't someone we can fight off. Even All Might wouldn't have dared come into our hideout without a group to back him up, said the second. Suddenly the noise outside stopped and the two held their breath, hoping to not be detected. They could hear the muted thud of boots getting closer, and from the tiny slit at the bottom of the door they could see that their assailant stopped in front of the door. Their hearts beat faster as they covered their mouths to prevent their breaths from being heard. After what seemed like an eternity, the entity outside left and the 2 men could breathe again, only for the door to be suddenly blasted off its hinges and made to crumple against the far wall of the room. So this is where you had hidden. An admirable action, even if it was foolish, came a voice from the doorway. There, standing in the doorway, stood Rikudou, his once pristine armor now stained with soot and blood. Behind him was a hellish sight as buildings burned and bodies laid on the ground with blood pooling around them. The 2 men drew the third behind them and stood on trembling legs to confront him. Rikudou grinned, his blood-red Sharingan glowing in the light of the fires behind him, giving him a most terrifying visage. Loyal to the very end, aren't you? A pity that I have to make you break your loyalty. Now, I have 2 options for you. You either continue standing there and die, or you cooperate and give me all the things I want to know, and I will let you live out the rest of your miserable lives in prison, said Rikudou. The 2 men grew angered at his words and rose their heads to meet the challenge head-on. Unfortunately, they had forgotten about the golden rule when engaging Rikudou. Never look in his eyes. Rikudou grinned as he felt the 2 fall under his genjutsu. From there it was an easy task of rummaging through their memories for anything useful. A few seconds later he disengaged the genjutsu and allowed the 2 to take a step back in fear. Oh, how gracious of you to offer this knowledge for free. For this service I will grant you a quick death, said Rikudou. A second, his left hand was covered in lightning that sparked to the sound of 1,000 birds. Chidori. In the next instance the chest of the first villain was pierced and his heart destroyed. The second didn't fare any better as his head was sliced off with a swing of a lightning-enhanced blade. Withdrawing his hand from the cooling corpse of the now dead villain, Rikudou stealthed his sword and picked up the unconscious boss. After receiving confirmation from his shadow clones that any and all evidence was removed and stored, Rikudou disappeared in a body flicker and repapered at the entrance of the cave where the villain base was located. Folding his hand in a hand seal, Rikudou spoke. Fuinjutsu Kai. Inside the cave, on an open ceiling scroll, a Fuinjutsu circle activated and released a stored plasma-style unstable Rasengan. The small ball of white light detonated milliseconds after its containment field fell, and the resulting explosion erased all trace of the former villain hideout and caused a collapse of the cave, forever sealing whatever evidence was not vaporized under hundreds of tons of rock. No one would learn of this massacre, and all was as it should be. It took me a week and a half before I managed to get a lead on just what the League of Villains was doing, though that's not strictly true. I discovered that the League had ties with an underground broker called Jiren, real name Kagero Okuda. He was a small-time villain that dealt with illegal arms and technology trafficking. He was probably one of All for One's former rooster of allies, one of the outer circle that was offered the chance to go solo after All for One's supposed death. This being said, that guy was craftier than I gave him credit for. Many of the leads I discovered turned out to be dead ends, with the people that knew how to find this Jiren being found either dead or catatonic, their minds destroyed. Somehow my ability to read the minds of others was leaked. It was expected, after all I used it on Kurogiri during the USJ. Nowadays Jiren seemed to be doing his business remotely, using expendable muscle as his delivery boys. A risky endeavor all things considered, but one that was necessary to preserve his life and freedom. After my latest raid on an underground safe house for villains, I managed to discover the League's next target, the hero killer Stain. It seemed like Shigaraki wanted to recruit Stain. A foolish and ultimately useless endeavor. Stain was widely known in the underground as being a solo player. After all, he had hundreds if not thousands of fans, and many a young villain that thought themselves wronged by society. One with ideals such as Stain was like a beacon to all those that believed as such, and he was unlikely to bow to the whims of a man-child. My task was now clear. Find Stain and take him into custody. As a secondary objective, I should work on a smear campaign against Stain, or a way to fracture whatever link he had with the League in the media's eyes should I fail in capturing Stain quietly. There was much to do, and with the sports festival fast approaching, not much time to do it in. I leaned back in my chair as I turned around to look out of the window. My office was at the top of Might Tower, a giant skyscraper in the middle of Roppongi, Tokyo. This truly was my agency nowadays. After my battle with the League at the USJ and the discovery that All for One was still alive and kicking, All Might decided to hand me the keys to his agency, literally and in public. There was a giant media circus, as I remember quite clearly. Not that I remember much from when the blonde oaf actually dropped this on me. I was too tired and shocked to even be able to respond. Still, it freed All Might from his obligation to the agency, and it gave me the opening I needed to build up my influence even more. Honestly, up until now I was some amalgamation of a sidekick and secretary for All Might, and now I had to take over his role completely. What a pain. A good thing that came out of it is the fact that I'm now invited to the UA Sports Festival as not only a UA alumnus but also as a pro hero in charge of an agency. I don't think that they expect me to take an intern, but if someone happens to catch my eye, I won't say no. This being said, I won't be taking Izuku as an intern. He needs to learn how to deal with his own problems and not expect me to bail him out every time. Furthermore, I don't want Izuku to live under my thumb and be unable to escape the shadow I cast. I was easily able to escape All Might's shadow, but it still haunts me. Rikudou is widely known as All Might's heir, that is true, but there was a time when I was known only as that. The USJ incident may have gone some way towards changing this perception, but it still needs a lot of work. I heard a knock on the door. Enter, I called out. The door opened and in came Shiro Nobuyuki. He was a young man that graduated from UA's management course in the same year as I. He was my secretary. I hired him once I discovered that the previous secretary was a spy for All for One. Of course, I made sure to dispose of that man. Sir, Night Eye and Gran Torino are here to see you, as well as a third-year UA student named Tagata Mirio. He says that he is Night Eye's intern, said Shiro. I see, send them in, Shiro, and initialize a beta-level quarantine around this level, I said. Yes sir, was the swift reply. I returned to watchine as my secretary left the room. I did not need to wait for very long as my three visitors entered the room. They stopped a few feet away from where I was. Madara, we need to talk, said Night Eye. I sighed and turned towards them and stood up. Indeed we do, I said as I passed my desk. I let loose a pulse of chakra in the ceiling array embedded in the floor. From there a blue rain spun into existence as the seal took effect, darkening the room as it spread over the windows. This action of mine startled them. Don't worry, it's just insurance against any spies that might be lurking around, I said. There are spies here? Asked Gran Torino, bewildered. I chuckled. It would be surprising indeed. After all, this very tower was for the better part of a decade the central operational command against the forces of All for One back when All Might was in his prime. Yes, it surprised me as well, but given that All Might used to spend so little time here over the past 6 years, it's not that surprising to see that some moles have gotten in. I eradicated most of them and the rest I keep under strict mind control to feed false information back to their masters, I said. I looked over them. Gran Torino's face was grim and understanding and Night Eye's was blank. Mirio's, though, spoke of a different emotion. You don't approve? I asked him. His smile became strained. I can't really say I do, but sir trusts you and so will I. Oh, how silly of me. I haven't introduced myself. I'm Mirio Tagata, third year UA student, said Mirio as he thrust his arm forward for a handshake. I won't be uncouth with a kid that did no wrong and whose only guilt was associating with a man I was in a disagreement with. I returned the gesture. Madara Midoriya, pro-hero Rikudou and head of Might Tower Agency, I said succinctly. Hey, you're really cool, let's fight someday, said Mirio with a grin. I remained impassive for a few moments as I studied him. Sweat was beginning to form along his brow, a clear sign that he was beginning to feel uncomfortable. Please go outside and find Shiro Nobuyuki. He will direct you to one of our training grounds. You're ready for a battle now, correct? I asked. This seemed to startle him, but he took it in stride and quickly left the room. Now that the baggage is gone, shall we begin? I said. Have you found anything on the League's actions? Asked Gran Torino, getting straight to the point. Some, though their objective is elusive. We have time though, so let's talk about your student, Night Eye, I said. What about him? He asked, seemingly indifferent. You brought him here in the hopes of convincing me that Izuku was the wrong choice for One for All. Don't deny it, Night Eye, your motives were quite transparent, I said, frowning. Then are you going to reject him from the start without even getting to know him? Asked Night Eye, filled with righteous anger for his student. Strange as it may sound, no, that's why I'm going to fight him after we're done here, to test his resolve. I will give him a chance, Night Eye, something that you wouldn't do were you in my shoes and Izuku in Mirio's, I said. Enough. We haven't come here to bicker like children. All for One is yet again loose in the world and we have to stop him, said Gran Torino, slamming his cane in the ground. I remained silent as I held Night Eye's gaze and he held mine. Not looking away, I waved my hand and numerous holographic screens appeared between us. Very well. So far I've been able to identify a person going by the name of Jiren as the League's primary broker. Unfortunately, my ability to read minds was revealed to the villains at USJ and Jiren has gone into hiding. What little of his network he managed to keep under his control once I began going after him seems to be somewhat disorganized. I did manage to find something about what the League wants, and that is a meeting with Stain. The hero killer? Why would they even want to collaborate? Asked Night Eye, surprised. While I was rummaging through the one called Kurogiri's mind, I discovered that Shigaraki thinks himself a revolutionary of sort. His dialogue though sounds more like a child's tantrum, so it's doubtful that he would be able to draw people to this supposed ideal of his. That's where Stain comes in. He can provide the ideological basis, and so long as he works under Shigaraki, villains will flock to the League, I said, exposing my predictions. That's highly doubtful. Stain wouldn't lower himself to work for a man-child, said Night Eye. Indeed, but he doesn't really need to work for them now, does he? After all, a martyr is sometimes as good as if not more so than an ideological leader. So long as he falls and the general public believes that he was working for the League, they will profit. Sometimes I forget how smart you are. You got any plans to stop that? Asked Gran Torino. Several, but nothing concrete. My best option is to face the hero killer in public and tear his ideals to shreds, though that comes with its own set of problems, I said. This problem was multi-faced to the extreme, and many courses of action would result in a catch-22 for the hero side, boosting the villain's position irrespective of their status as winners or losers. Such matters were delicate and could not be solved by simply throwing powerful heroes at the problem. The fact that I was capable of dealing with these matters made me so much more valuable than the rest of the top-tier heroes. I see. So, what do you want from us? You called us here after all, said Night Eye. Support, if you are able to spare any. I know we may not see eye to eye on many things, Night Eye, but I do not wish for this world to fall into chaos. Whatever machinations All for One has placed in motion are well hidden and impossible to determine. This League of Villains is the closest we've gotten to his operation since his fight with All Might, if he still runs them like Might Tower's record show, I said. I don't know if I'll be able to help you much, but you have my support in this endeavor. Should I find anything noteworthy, I'll let you know, said Night Eye. He then rose from his chair and left without saying another word. I doubt that our relations will be anything but frigid. You're playing a dangerous game, kid, said Gran Torino. I directed my attention at the old man, lying to the public, hiding information from the hero database, and even going as far as to kill in cold blood. He shook his head. I worry about what our world will end up becoming. So do I, but what I do is necessary. The system as it is now is corrupt and bloated, and as much as it pains me to say, I can't fix it. All I can do is win this war with All for One. So you say. I pray that you will not find the price of whining too costly to bear. After this festival is over, send the kid my way. I'll make sure he's not slacking off his training, said Gran Torino as he too prepared to leave. I said nothing as I watched him go. I hope you're right, old man, but I fear this war may take something from all of us, regardless of my actions. After all, there are few prices I wouldn't be willing to pay to ensure victory. I know that his words should have instilled some sort of fear or dread into my heart, but I feel nothing. Maybe this is the price I pay for my power. To stand so far above the rest that their woes no longer touch or reach you. What a truly terrifying existence that is for those below, and what a boring existence that would be for the one above. I left the room soon after and headed for the training room I know to be pending use. I made sure to change into a more suitable outfit than the semi-formal one I usually wore when I was conducting business at my tower. The doors opened automatically in front of me as I entered the reinforced room that was used for minor combat training. This room was perfectly suited for those that needed to improve their hand-to-hand combat abilities, but it was quite unsuited for someone like me to go all out. He may sound arrogant, but I don't think I'll need my full power to deal with Mirio. He may be good, but he's still reflexes and reaction times, something that I have far surpassed with my usage of chakra. "Oh, hi, I was just getting ready to start," said Mirio. I could see that he was just finishing up a set of stretches. "Did you wait long?" I asked. "No really. Honestly, I thought that your meeting with Sir would take longer," said Mirio. "Well, then let's begin. First one to be knocked out or unable to continue loses?" I asked. He nodded and I made a sign. A few seconds later the horn blared and the match was on. I did not move and instead focused my chakra around me like a cloak. It was a new technique that I created to detect objects around me in a 4-meter radius. I could go further, but then my combat ability is impaired due to sensory overload. Mirio made the first move by undressing. His clothes apparently fell through his body and unwittingly, I activated my Sharingan. With the amount of data the Sharingan could give me, I could quite clearly see that Mirio's quirk is some sort of knockoff Kamui. In the hands of a knowledgeable and trained fighter, the phase-shifting ability of the Kamui is nigh unrivaled. After all, Tobi was able to keep up with the combined power of Kakashi, Guy and KCM Naruto in an almost pure taijutsu battle using only this aspect of Kamui, and I doubt that Mirio has the same weakness as Kamui. Suddenly my senses blared and I reacted. From behind me and out of the ground popped out a naked Mirio, his fist already chambered and aiming towards me. My Sharingan could see the portions of his body that were still intangible, and the battle precognition granted to me by my eyes made it so I knew what I had to do. My chakra flexed and I was off in a fraction of a second into a flash step. As I came out of it, I could see Mirio's shocked face as he tried to expand his permeability. It was useless against my speed, even without the lightning chakra armor. My fist found his gut and Mirio was launched into a wall with enough force to crack the wall and make him puke out his lunch. I stood there as I watched him passively as he tried to get up. "I have to say, I'm impressed," I said. Mirio lifted his head to look at me. I could see the pain in his eyes. "You made me activate my Sharingan, something only All Might has previously done," I said, bringing a hand to gesture to my blood-red eyes. I smiled. "Your quirk, is it automatic or do you need to manually control which parts of your body you turn intangible?" I asked. "The second," he said as he struggled up. He managed to stand by bracing himself against the wall. "Then you were even more impressive. Against a normal opponent you would have won quite easily. Unfortunately for you, I possess a form of battle precognition. Tell me, can you still fight? I'd like to see the measure of your martial prowess," I said. He steadied himself before nodding and charging towards me. I couldn't help it, I grinned. We met in the middle of the room, just like last time. This time, though, we were taking each other seriously. I have to say that the more I fought, the more impressive Mirio became in my eyes. He is determined to prove himself and his fighting style made blocking quite redundant. My attacks were useless as well, though to be frank, I was enjoying this match so I didn't use chakra to enhance myself beyond what the Sharingan provided me. After close to half an hour of continuous battle, Mirio disengaged. "You're holding back," he noted. "I am. I apologize for the disrespect, but this battle with you is the first fight in a long while that I could actually enjoy," I said. Mirio looked stunned for a moment and then grinned and laughed. As soon as he did that, he collapsed on the ground. "Man, you're intense. I haven't fought this hard since the beginning of my training with Sir, and you haven't even broken a sweat." He spoke the truth. I was not tired and the chakra circulating inside of me kept me at an optimal temperature. On the other hand, Mirio was an exhausted mess. "After your sport festival, consider my offer for an internship," I said. Mirio's head shot up and he looked at me with wide eyes. I smiled at him. "I could see some deficiencies in your fighting style that I would like to correct. You are, after all, one of the few people that I could say I have had a hard fight against. It would not do to have you at anything other than peak performance," I said. I began Mirio, but I stopped him. "You don't need to decide now. Take some time and recover. I'll be sending you an offer regardless after the sport festival," I said. "So, what did you think about this, Sir?" asked Mirio after he and Night Eye entered their waiting car. Night Eye was quiet. He could not believe that the one he had trained for more than a year fell to a single attack by Madara. Was he right? Was Madara right in saying that he made a mistake with choosing Mirio? Mirio, do you want this? Asked Night Eye. Mirio frowned. I do, I mean even you can't defeat me so easily. There's a lot I could learn from him, said Mirio. That you can. Madara is one of the greatest combatants of this generation and he is powerful enough to beat All Might in a fair fight, said Gran Torino. Mirio believed him. Just this small bout with Madara showed him the difference between them. Learning from someone as great as Madara, the legendary pro-hero Rikudou himself, was a great honor. I'll accept his offer, said Miro. Night Eye leaned back in the car seat, uncertainty plaguing his mind. Rikudou was a truly terrifying man and against him even the nation's top heroes were as good as quirkless.